Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be doing a pool tutorial for community lots. So you may have already seen my other pool tutorial that has a few ideas for pools at home basically. So there was like a sunken lounge, a pool bar, you know, a few little tips and tricks there. So if you haven't checked that one out and you'd like to, I'll put the link up the top now. But yeah, today we're going to have a look at some different ideas based on community lots. So as you can see, I've laid out somewhat of a park, a water park, and yeah, let's get into it. To create our beach entry pool, you need to raise a foundation like so and place a half wall around like this. What you do outside of that is entirely up to you, but what we don't want is the walls on the side to be like this. The reason being, we want to be able to lower our pond to get that beach entry effect, and it just won't happen. It'll look untidy if we don't. So once you've got this area, it's a pretty easy task to create the pond, and the majority of this is trial and error. And also what you do around here is basically decorative. You can do what you want with it, but this is the important part, making sure you've got that square outline. Alright, we're going to get the terrain tool and we are going to lower the terrain. You can use circle or square. I just prefer the square for doing this. I can see better. So just near the back here, we're going to drop it down a little bit. We are then going to flatten terrain with this tool down to whatever level you desire. Doesn't really matter. Just be careful that when we're doing this, we stay within that square compound area. Of course, the stairs are there, so it's preventing me from lowering that section, which isn't a problem. Just continue to lower it until we have filled up that area. From here, we're going to get the water tool and raise it up to wherever you like. That's the max height. And now we need to create that beach look, that rounded look. So we're going to use our terrain tools again, and we're going to use smooth terrain. Use the circle for this part, probably about this size. This is too big, yep, this size. And slowly from the base, from the lower section, drag it up. You have to do it in little increments because it can be a bit touchy. And you're trying to get that rounded look, and you can see here it's not going to be quite perfect. You can always undo it and try again, but it's tricky to get. You can lower make the tool size a bit smaller and try again. But yeah, you're probably always going to get that little overhang. We can hide that though, so it's not a problem. Once you're happy with the shape, you can soften the entire bottom to make it look a little more natural, and any mishaps you can flatten terrain like here and just bring that back up to where you want it. Once you're happy with where it is and how it looks, the rest is decorative from here. That is the basis, and it will be functional. Of course, there are a few things that you can do. As you can see here, if you go too far, it will just not look like a beach entry. Yeah, that's it. Of course, being a beach entry, you really do want it to look that way. So personally, I always add some plants and some terrain paint. If you only have base game, never fear, you've got 2 sand options here. Obviously, if you've got island living, you've got a few more, but these 2 for base game and these ones for island living. Doesn't really matter which one you choose, but very carefully fill it in to be sandy looking. And using the round tool, we can either finish it off here if you want it only to be the water that's sandy, or bring it up and out if you want more of that beach look. I'm sure a lot of you will come up with some wonderful ideas and different ways to do it. I'm sure there's other ways to achieve the same thing. But my perfectionism here requires me just to straighten this out a bit and round it out. I always like to cover up those little flickering bits. It bothers me that it does that, but it is an easy fix with a little bit of landscaping, of course. So again, base game do have palm trees to give it that tropical beachy vibe. So you can achieve this with base game alone, or if you have island living or even the jungle pack, there are other options like these ones that you can add into the build to give it more of a tropical beachy feel. You can always add in more plants around here to help hide those little bits of overhanging bits with the pond. I'm just going to quickly go ahead and put in a few plants and shrubs just to show you what I mean. But you can always cover it not just with landscaping, but you could put in pillars or the shade sails. You could build something there to sort of conceal it. You could bring that half wall and foundation area around slightly to cover it as well. What you can see me doing at the moment is just sizing down some objects to cover it. If you're unfamiliar with how to do this, please check out my build mode basic tutorial, which is linked up the top now, for all the little clever hints and tips for doing things like shrinking and moving objects. And that there is the foundation or the basis of your beach entry pool. It is fully functional for adults, children and toddlers. Obviously adults and toddlers can wade in. Adults and children can wade in. Toddlers will remain on this area here. So for our splash pad, we're going to begin with picking out some carpets or rugs or floor decor, whatever you want, just to create that design to give it a bit of a, kid-friendly feel. I like to use this one in particular, but it's really up to you how you lay it out. But once you've put down the patterning on the floor that you want, you can then go ahead and start adding in basically whatever you like. There's no hard and fast rules with a splash pad. in terms of activities and what you want on there and what you don't. A lot of it is personal taste, a lot of it is, up to your own imagination. The main thing to remember for a splash pad is that you're going to be using the fountains. That's what gives it the illusion of a splash pad. So you could use any sort of activities, playgrounds for the kids. If you don't have some of these items, doesn't matter. You could put a swing set in and put some fountains around it and it would still count as a splash pad. Even the bucket from, I think it's Seasons, where they can have water balloon fights, even that type of thing. As you can see, I was changing my mind on what I wanted. And I really couldn't make up my mind. But I decided on the slide. I've used this many times before. The one thing to remember is that you have to play test it, because obviously here in build mode, even when you place those fountains or sprinkler heads, whatever you want to call them, you can't see the water coming out. These can't see the water coming out, so you do have to play test it to make sure that it's functional. As you can see, I'm placing them relatively close to the objects, and sometimes, depending on which one you're using, like especially the dome type ones, sometimes the Sims won't be able to use the objects if they're overlapping. So yes, do make sure you play test your splash pads. You might need to move it around a little bit. Obviously this one that I am doing right now, I have not play tested yet. I'm still building it. So even the way that you see it here, it may require a little bit of tweaking when I go back and test it. These ones as well, the circular ones, they tend to have an issue with overlapping. Here I'm just going to put a few fountains they're the ones that spout over the top, just to give it a bit more oomph. These are also good to put in, just as something a little bit different if you have cottage living. But any fountain will do really. Any sort of water feature will work for the splash pad. I love to use these if you have the toddlers pack to conceal those fountain pieces. And it does also give it more of a kid vibe. Makes it a bit more, I don't know, realistic, I guess. But again, this is personal preference. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. You can leave it as it is. I'm sure there's plenty of other items that you could find within the packs that you do have in the debug menu, or possibly just the pack itself in the decor items, or even in the like statues and stuff, that you could also utilize with a little bit of imagination. Just putting in some lights up the back here. Of course, I'm building this specifically to complete a build. So I'm doing a little bit more than what I would normally do in a tutorial. These shade sails are great when you can get them to line up because of the way that the poles are. They can be a bit painful, but they do give it a more realistic touch, especially when it comes to a splash pad, because I don't know any parent that would put their children under a splash pad for hours on end that didn't have some sort of shade, or they would have to have an awful lot of sunscreen. This here is just decorative items, so again, personal taste, personal preference. Really, like I said, the only rules for a splash pad is that you have some of those fountain pieces. The rest is just for decorative purposes. These are from the debug menu. I often use them on my splash pads because once again, it just gives it more of a kid-friendly vibe. Makes it look a bit more inviting and a little bit more realistic. Again, this is all decorative, but I do like to make it look somewhat realistic. And I have seen many splash pads that have like the little pirate theme going on. So the steering wheel there makes it look good. I like to put these vents in and conceal them wherever I can, because anyone who's used these in their pools knows that they sort of expel bubbles almost, and it kind of gives it a cool little extra for a splash pad. And this is where I realized that my shade sail overlapped. So yeah, make sure, like I said, play test, play test, play test. Again, especially with this slide, if you put these too close, it renders it useless, but most times you can get it pretty close. And that's basics of your splash pad. You can use other items, like I said, fountains and things, to kind of, you layer them like so. You can make your own custom looking things. Toddler pools are really easy to create. You just have a piece of foundation, any shape you like, and you're going to lower it into the ground twice. That will give you a decent indent, which they will be able to get into, but when you fill it up with water, it's not going to be too big, as you can see. It won't like overflow when you just fill it up the once. If you only drop it down once, it might overflow and it will lose its shape. If you're not happy with how untidy the edges are, you can smooth them out with the smooth terrain tool, and you can see it will just shape it a little bit better, depending on how you want to go about it and how particular you are. You may or may not want to do this. It's entirely up to you. Either way, it'll still be functional, but it does make it look a little less I don't know, out of place if you kind of round out the edges. From here, you can change the watercolors if you like, depending on what packs you have. I tend to go for this one from Get Together. And then it's a matter of decorating it. Now, there are a few ways that you can go about this. You can put flooring down, like so, and keep the bottom of the pool like that, but you're left with that water around the outside that kind of shows through. And if you put tiles down like this, it won't, like, it loses its shape. So the other thing you can do is delete that room and then flatten out that terrain. That's the other option. And then you could use the terrain paint to make the base of the pool whatever you want. For today, I'm using rocks to just conceal the edges. I want to keep the base and that room there. So all I'm doing is sizing the rocks up once. And going around the outline to try and hide that bit of water I don't want showing. I'll just quickly go ahead and finish that. Perfect. Next up is some landscaping, also to hide those bits of water that are overhanging the base of the pool. So if you hold Alt, you can slide these into whatever space you like. And I'm just going to go ahead and landscape quickly, just to fill in those gaps. Put some trees in for shade. And I'm going to keep the base, so I'm going to recolor that there. So that's the basics of our toddler pool. If you want to tidy it up a bit around the entrance to the pool, you can with the terrain paint. Simply choose what you like and go around the edges there. And that will just tidy up that entry a little bit. Now, as I mentioned previously, Sims that are adults or children will be able to wade into the water, so they'll be able to go out there. But toddlers cannot. They will stay in the shallow depths right near that entry point. Here we're going to add in a little bit of decorative stuff. So going below, we're going to raise this up roughly about 12 times, give or take, depending on how low you've made your pool or how high you want these to stick out of the ground. And I'm going to put in a pole in the middle, which is going to act as a water fountain. Because as I said, this part back here won't be used by the toddlers. That's more for decorative purposes. Adding in a few pool-like items, which if you have island living, I find they have the best things for this, but I'm sure with some creativity you could create something. To create our kids play pool, we're going to start with just a foundation around that square piece that you can see here. And I've got that shape in the middle because I want to add some curves around the edges. So that's just a basic guide, and it's also going to function as a way to lower the terrain to the correct height. You don't have to do this, you can just do it freehand if you want. You don't need that piece in the middle. This is just to help out those of you who want a little bit more direction. So once you've got your outline of the pool with the foundation, you can either go ahead and use the terrain tools to lower that central bit, or using this floor piece that you've created in the middle, you can drag it down. Now you can see that if those pieces are too close together, it's going to drag the whole lot down. We don't want that. So you may have to make that piece in the middle a bit smaller, like so that it's not touching. And we're going to drop it down 1 to 2 times. You don't really want it any deeper than that, because then the children won't be able to wade into it. Of course, we're using the pond tool again, so we want it to be functional. Once you've done this, get that flatten terrain tool and take all of that bit of terrain that is within the outline, I guess, and flatten it out. This is the part that I said you don't really need to have that arched centerpiece. You could just do this freehand. It's entirely up to you. Once we've flattened it out, Just like the toddler pool, you've got the option to either keep that floor piece in the middle or get rid of it. Last time we kept it, this time I'm going to delete it. And of course that's going to make the terrain raise up there. So we're just going to make sure we flatten it all to the same height. So there are a couple of different ways you can get to this point. Ultimately, you just want to make sure that you have some sort of an outline, like so, with the terrain lowered in the middle. You only want to be able to raise the water up once. That's how you know it'll be functional. It'll be able to be waded in. And of course you will need some form of stairs to enable them to get down into that area. So another good way to tell if it's the correct depth is by the stairs. When you place them, you only want 2 to 3 steps, really. Any deeper than that and they might not be able to wade into it. Adults probably, but not children. So considering this is for children, we want it to be the correct depth. From here, it's pretty much up to you how you go about decorating it. Because we removed that floor piece, you will likely have to use some terrain paint to line the bottom of your pool. In this case, I'm going to go with these pebbles. I am going to do a bit of a beachy theme here, so mostly because I'm going to use a piece of play equipment and we only really have 3 to choose from. There's like that winter one if you have Snowy Escape, which isn't really going to work with a swimming pool. I suppose you could do like a Frozen style castle maybe, I don't know. But that's the basics. It's then adding in all of those fountains, much like we did previously with the toddler pool. Add in the little ones that create the bubbles. You've got all of the water fountains, like the spouts that you could use. And as with the splash pad, when I mentioned all of these, when you're putting those spouts, those water spouts around the equipment, you do have to play test it. I can't emphasize that enough. You must play test because some of what you do, if it's overlapping just in the wrong spot, it will make it not functional. And that is especially true for this pirate ship because there are certain areas that you need to keep clear, certain paths, so that the kids can still climb up onto the pirate ship and use it. So yes, playtest, playtest, playtest. Once again, using all of these, use as many as you can, different types. Obviously, if you've got more packs, then you're likely to have more things that you can use. But there are plenty of base game items, especially the fountains or these spouts, that you can place wherever you want. Remember, hold down Alt so that you can get them as close as possible, like really push those boundaries. Another good one to use, which is base game, is this Spitfire one, and you can put that all around wherever you like. And that will do the same job as those fountains, really. These from Spa Day are also a good one to use in kids' pools. If you have Spa Day. Yeah, it's just about chucking in as many different things as you can. And obviously I'm going for a pirate ship themed pool. Sometimes that can help if you think of a theme that you want before you start. Because as I said, the play equipment for children in The Sims is sorely lacking. Okay, last but not least is our lazy river. So there are about 100 different ways that you could go about this. Everyone has their own sort of thoughts or feels for it. Some people might go for a modern feel, some people might go for a more natural feel. Yeah, it's really up to you. But basically, to create any sort of lazy river, you need to use the custom pool tool and outline some weird shape. And you do want it to be a little irregular. You don't want it to be straight edged. It won't look like a river. It will just look like a square. So yeah, you want it to be odd shaped. Once you have that, you can go around the edges here and put in all the rocks, trees, shrubs, whatever you like to conceal the edges, make it look a bit more natural. For the purpose of today's tutorial, we're going to use a raised up center bit so that we can create a little spa area in there. And this funky little bit over here is going to be for our bridge. As you can see, it's got the pointed edges. It is on a diagonal, so for it to be functional, you will have to put pointy edges so that you can connect the stairs, because for some reason we still can't build stairs on a diagonal. I wish they would fix it. Anyway, we're going to copy that floor piece, take it up a level, and of course you can see it conflicts over that water. So we're just going to place it here for the time being, remove the floor underneath. That will give us our beautiful floating floor. Now, because I've got the pointed edges on already, I can't drag it across the water without it changing its shape. So I will have to fix that quickly, but we can raise this up and down however we like now. I'm just going to go ahead and quickly get rid of this pointy bit here, and that way I can drag it across the river. Same on the other side. So when you build yours, you won't have those pointy bits to start with. Yours will probably be just a diagonal square, or rectangle I should say, like so. Lower it down. You don't want it to be so low into the ground that it changes the terrain. You need it to sit up just a little bit, like so that you can actually put stairs that are going to drop down and connect without changing the height of the terrain. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of those and add on my little pointy bits again. That way we will be able to connect stairs. It doesn't really matter what stairs you use, as always, personal taste. I am going to just quickly copy these ones so I can keep it the same. And we can copy that and do it on both corners, and the same on the other side. That there is the basics for doing your lazy river with a bridge. There's a roof here, go away. We don't want the roof. So that's the basics. From here, it is entirely up to you how you go about decorating it and what you choose to put in the center. You don't have to have a bridge that's raised up like this. You could leave the terrain in the center flat and just create a bridge with the same steps either side. It really just depends. It's whatever you want it to be. Thanks for watching my video, guys. If you enjoyed what you saw and you want to see more, make sure you subscribe, and also click on that notification bell so you don't miss out on new content. You can also check me out on my socials.